Well, good morning. My name's Steve Siegel. I'm a Senior Director of Value Marketing here at ServiceNow. I'm delighted to have Piero DePaoli here with me today, who's Senior Director of Product Marketing for our Security Operations team. And we're going to go through this presentation today on seeing what 45% faster security incident response can do for your company. So with that, let me go ahead and turn it over to Piero.
Great, thanks so much, Steve. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to want to give folks a brief overview of security operations, and I'll do this all on one slide. And so the first thing for security operations is we've got several different modules that make up the offering, and the first two are really the most important ones to remember. The first one is what we call security incident response. And what security incident response is all about is the ability for us to pull in information from lots of different third-party security products, whether it's a SIM, an endpoint security product, a firewall, etc. So anything is essentially that can throw a security alert. We want to be able to ingest that into the ServiceNow platform to then help organizations be able to manage the response process to that particular security incident. The second one is called vulnerability response. And if security incident response is the way to be kind of reactive, a security alert's happened and we're going to go and work on the problem, vulnerability response gives the opportunity to security professionals to be proactive, where they can, this is where we've integrated with the leading vulnerability scanners in the world, folks like Tenable, Qualys, and Rapid7. And we can ingest vulnerability scan data on whatever basis a customer scans their machines. And then we can take that data and then help manage which vulnerabilities the organization should respond to first. And there'll be a little bit more context on that as I go through these boxes here. The third area is around threat intelligence. And what threat intelligence is all about is working with more third-party security tools as part of the security incident or vulnerability investigation process. So most of the time when a security professional is going to work on solving a security issue, they consult a ton of different third-party resources to do things like check to see if an IP address is bad, or if a URL is known to be bad, or maybe even take a piece of potential malware and go and detonate it someplace so that they can see if it's malware or not. These are all tasks that are done very manually, and when adding those into ServiceNow, we can help automate much of that work. The fourth area is around workflow. And so really we include workflow as well as a couple other things in here, because the entire security incident response process or vulnerability response process involves a lot of tasks and a lot of people within various teams. And getting this stuff out of manual processes such as spreadsheets and emails and pulling in alerts from multiple products and having a workflow where the tasks are immediately handed off from one person to the next makes the security incident response and vulnerability response process happen a lot faster, and frankly gives it some order. The fifth area right next to workflow is around automation and orchestration. And just like workflow, these are some of the core platform features inside of ServiceNow. And you may hear a lot about security orchestration or security automation, as both Gartner and Forrester have started to write more about this. And one of the reasons we put the word workflow before automation and orchestration is because you really need to have an end-to-end process in order to figure out what portions you're going to automate. And there's really no better way of doing an end-to-end process than looking at a workflow from end to end. And many times the automation or orchestration that a security team may take on is going to be within a particular workflow. And so maybe there might be a task or two or something that's mundane that a team does over and over again. That will be the thing that they tend to automate, but not automate everything from an end-to-end basis. The last box here is what we call deep IT integration. And this is critically important for all of these different boxes here. And the reason we call this out is really twofold. The first is that anytime a security incident or a vulnerable item is loaded up into ServiceNow, what we can do is take the rich IT data from the configuration management database to help use that as a very important factor in prioritization. Without a deep IT integration, a security professional is always going to they're always going to work on the thing that looks like it's the worst possible, or the incident or vulnerability that's going to have the biggest impact. What deep IT integration does is it allows a security professional to get more context on what that security incident or vulnerability really is and how it's going to potentially affect their organization. And so if you saw two identical security incidents, and one was on a server that shows you what's for lunch in the cafe every day, and the other is on an employee database. Those two things to a security professional without that IT context may look identical. But what IT context does is clearly you'd want to work on the one that's got employee data on it before you have the one that's going to show you what's for lunch. And then the second half of deep IT integration is the work that gets done to solve security problems is typically done by multiple teams. It's not just security. Many of the tasks that are done to solve a security problem are actually done by people in IT. And so the ability for a security professional as part of one of these workflows or some of this automation orchestration, many of those tasks may get passed from security to IT professionals. And there's really no better way, especially for a ServiceNow customer on the IT side, to do this in the system that they are already using. Because maybe the most important aspect of everything that makes up the security operations offering is that it is built on top of the ServiceNow platform, or Now platform, if you will. And the platform itself, we're using the same underlying engine, the same underlying database, except that we've really built the applications in security operations to be for the security professional. We've also done some things to segment the data. So things like building security incident response as a scoped application. So only the security incident admin can see all of the specific security data within the ServiceNow instance. This becomes critically important when working on very sensitive items. And in fact, we've added some more layers, what we call traffic light protocol, or TLP red or TLP green, et cetera. And TLP red means you can restrict something down to only the people you've identified that need to work on it. So it can even be more restrictive than that. But the beauty of this being on the ServiceNow platform is being able to take advantage of those same proven engines around workflow, automation, orchestration, and then that deep IT integration. And so that's a super brief overview of the security operations offering for the folks who may not be familiar with it. And what I want to do is I'll flip back over to Steve, and he can walk you through a few things around some ways that we're able to show you how you're able to best get value out of using the security operations offering.
All right, excellent. Great job, Piero. Thank you very much. Let's see. So one of the key things that a lot of our customers often ask us questions about is what are the specific business outcomes we can help drive, and what's the benefit? Put some numbers to this. So with that, my team worked very closely with Piero, and we help develop these things we call value calculators. And the way you find them is you go to ServiceNow.com. Whoops, actually, I think I'm sharing. Okay, good. I'm sharing. Let's see. So you go to ServiceNow.com and you type in calculator, right? And we actually have several of these. One of which is for security operations. So I'm going to go right into that now. And what you see here is a base level of value based on a set of studies that we had done, particularly in this case, a Forrester study that Piero and team had just worked on. All of the calculators that we support, which include IT, customer service, and security operations, amongst others. They're all based on Forrester TEI studies. And that's where the numbers come from. And the key thing there is that these are based on interviews of real, actual customers. And so what we're going to go do here is I'm going to talk to Piero, because he goes out and day to day talks to a lot of our customers, and go understand, based on that customer, their answers to these questions about numbers of employees, number of security incidents and that kind of thing, and number of vulnerabilities they might manage. And we're going to go see what kind of value calculation we can come up with. So Piero, you ready to go?
I am.
Okay, great. So first and foremost, for the kind of company that you have in mind, how many employees do they have? We start with a default based on the folks in the study.
Yeah, so why don't we go ahead and put 20,000 in there? Okay.
So what you see here is I adjust that number to get it to 20,000. I can move these sliders. Pretty cool. Kind of. It's actually an addiction for me. But what you see here is that the number of security incidents changes and scales as well as weekly vulnerabilities and some of the other parameters. But you can override these and change them. So okay, so with Piero, with an employee size of 20,000, what do you think is a good number for this particular company that you have in mind for a qualified security incident? Is it 25,000? Is it much higher, much lower?
You know what? Why don't we put in 26,000, which is just a little bit higher than that. And the reason being is that the calculator has some data in there based on Forrester research, where they've seen an average of 1.3 security incidents per employee. I mean, clearly, like as many of you go through this, you may have a little bit of a different metric, but it's a great kind of baseline to start with. So yeah, let's do 26,000. That'll give us our 1.3.
Right. Okay, great. And you see here, as I've highlighted it, you can click on the tooltips for where relevant. You can get these rules of thumb. And I don't know if you notice, but you can move the sliders, but you can also just type over the figure there to get the number you want. Piero, do you want to say with percentage of security incidents that are tier 1 versus tier 2 at 93, or you want to adjust it a little bit?
Let's adjust that to just adjust it to 94 just to see what happens.
Okay.
And a little bit more on the tier 1, because you'll see tier 1 and tier 2 show up a little bit later. Yeah. And there you go. This is it really showing you that the tier 1 incidents are ones that can really be handled by a single analyst, and so they might be the ones that are going to be more simple, which is why that percentage is going to be higher. And clearly, as we put 94 at tier 1, we're putting the rest, or the 6%, as things that are tier 2, where more analysts need to get involved, and clearly the work on those is going to be harder.
Yeah. And one of the things that I hope you can see it is that as we make these adjustments, these numbers do change. So it's a live calculator. As you change the inputs, so do the outputs change. Let's keep going. One of the things I'd like to mention is that once we go ahead and set a number, the scaling for that particular number stops. So if we went back and changed the parameters here, you notice the annual qualified security incidents doesn't change. But I'll go ahead and put this back to 20,000 where we had it. Let's keep going. Okay, so Piero, let's talk about vulnerabilities. The default gives us a value based on 10 vulnerabilities per employee per week of a number of 200,000. How does that sound to you? Do you think the company you have in mind might be different than that? Likely will be different.
Yeah, it's really interesting, and as folks listening to this, they may feel like this number is maybe a little bit high or a little bit low. Talk to small companies that have they have not a lot of employees but have 350,000 servers, and so their vulnerability number might be higher. Or if they've got a lot of maybe a lot of employees but not as much infrastructure, that number might be lower. But why don't we up that a little bit to 220,000?
Okay. Again, we can type over that. It's just based on personal preference. The one thing I'll highlight, and I'm going to do this here very quickly and then change it, because a lot of folks have asked us questions. We have general ranges here for what we think is kind of the norm, but there's always room to go either above or below. So if, for example, you had 320,000 vulnerabilities instead, it'll max there, but it'll calculate based on this new number. So one of the things we just needed to do to kind of make the user experience a little bit more manageable. But anyway, we'll put it back to 220,000. Piero, let's look at the other questions here. Let's keep going. Hours, or go ahead. Hours to resolve.
Yeah, so this is the simpler of the two types of incidents. Why don't we've kind of increased some numbers. Why don't we back this number down a little bit, and let's claim it's 1 hour for each one of those, like those ones that are done by one security person.
Okay, fair enough. All right. You notice again that the numbers do adjust and change pretty much instantaneously as we make those changes. And then what about tier 2 plus?
Yeah, and so these are the ones that are going to be really complex. We're looking for an average in here. Why don't we back this one down too? Even though like we've upped some other ones. Why don't we make this 70?
Okay, fair enough. Again, just in the interest of time, I'm just doing the typing. And let's talk about vulnerabilities here. We've got kind of a base estimate of 240 hours a week to sort, prioritize weekly vulnerabilities. So what adjustment would you like to make there?
Yeah, let's. This is something that we hear constantly from customers, that they're pulling in scan data and then have I literally met with a Fortune 10 company that had somebody whose their role was how they basically having somebody take information from scans and put that into spreadsheets and farm those out to different people. So why don't we up that one just to 250 a little bit, just to change the number a little bit. Okay,
great. And I did it a lot faster with the sliders than I usually do. So there we go. Things are good. Okay, and then finally, last question that we have is the hours to fix those weekly vulnerabilities that are sorted through in the previous question.
Yeah, why don't we
160?
why don't we leave this one on the default with the 160? We've messed with enough data in here.
Yes. Okay. Well, and again, what we find here is these defaults are based on real customer experience, but we know there's a lot of variations. So you can certainly use the defaults. I will say touch on the tooltips so that you can see things, learn the rules of thumb and how they may apply to you. But there's a set of defaults there if you don't immediately know the answers. But you can see here fairly quickly through discussion, you can ask some basic questions and you have a view now of a total level of economic impact, a total business impact that totals up to about $3.4 million, right, based on this set of responses. But the key thing here that we talk about is what breaks it down, because at first sometimes it's like, well, where did you get that number from? And what we do here is we break it down. So we show a good chunk of that is driven by faster security incident response, right? And this is the benefit in productivity and time saved and that kind of thing that is driven when you can identify, prioritize, and respond to security threats with speed and efficiency, because it's all integrated into one system. And then equally, on the faster vulnerability response side, right, it shows here the economic side of the benefit, the productivity enhancement and improvement when your vulnerability response times get that much better, and that kind of thing. So the bottom line is what you have here, right, is a case where you can kind of show an overall level of benefit, put some numbers to it, and show how it impacts the overall organization, but you show a little bit of detail as far as where the numbers came from. Now, one of the things I noticed, Piero, and we get this question a lot, is that there's a pretty sizable difference in the dollars in the economic side between security incident response and vulnerability response. Do you want to take a run at explaining maybe why that difference is there?
Yeah, I think a lot of this has to do with the complexity of the security incidents and volume of security incidents that come in. You start looking at these tier 2, where it's taking an analyst 70 hours to do that work. Just the volume on those and the complexity of the work, and that's also why we saw the value of doing it faster showing up at 45%, because there's so much that we're able to help with in terms of kind of speeding up, and we kind of almost call it like eliminating the mundane parts of the work, which is, no one really got into security to go and cut and paste IP addresses and URLs from one system into another and wait for results. Those are things that can be done very quickly by machines, so that a security analyst can use their big brain to go look at the results and then figure out what to do next. And the vulnerability side is just there's a lot of data, but the work is once you've got the right work in hand, the work is a little bit simpler.
Okay, great. All right, so one of the things we're going to go do now is we understand that while these are very solid numbers, again based on real customer experience. Let's call it what it is. People in security, very technical people, I guess I call them show me people, right? Which is, we've shown a little bit of the numbers, a little bit of what's behind it. We think it's a good high level overview, but we also know it isn't enough. So if you go in and click one of these download full results buttons and give us a little bit of information, we're gonna, since Piero gave us the information here, sorry for watching you, having you watch me type, but I'll go as fast as I can. Oops. Need your full address there, huh? Okay. Okay, so we're just putting Piero's information in here, just kind of the basics, right? And we hit submit. Oops. There we go. Okay, and what we do here now is we're actually creating on the fly, right? And it's here right now, and you should be able to see it. Maybe a little bit of a delay. But what we have here now is an actual real business case that is tailored and based on that information that we just put together. And I will go through it. Starts with an introduction and overview with not just the sum total of numbers, although that's there. We give an overview and a breakdown, an executive overview that if you were filling this out, it'd be the kind of thing that you could share with a colleague and walk them through it. You could walk your boss through it and that kind of thing. Scrolling down just a little bit further, there's a little bit of a click down on the executive summary, not just the top level number, but a little bit of that breakdown that we just showed you, very similar to what we just showed you online in the calculator itself. But we recognize again that there are folks who just need to go deeper. So we provide that level of information. So we talk here about that, what we call a value driver, that 45% faster security incident response. We break it down and show you how you actually realize those benefits. You see things here like, an improvement of 30% and faster tier 1 security incidents, but when you get to tier 2 and it's across multiple departments, et cetera, that speed increase goes to 50%, right? The 45% is a weighted average between the two. And then what we do is we share a customer quote, again, because all of this information and all these models are all based on real customer experience. So we, here have an executive from one of the firms that was interviewed, explaining how they, reduced the time to assess the severity of issues and how it helped them improve their response times. And then further behind each of these, right, is we talk at a high level about how those things are actually calculated, right? The different parameters that are used and the assumptions that are made right down in this little gray box here. Have the same for the vulnerability response times, right? Encourage you all to go give it a try and, look at it in detail for yourselves. Just scrolling down here on some of the different things that we provide there of the solutions that are included, some of the upside and ways to increase value with some other capabilities that we have around performance analytics, IT solutions as an example. We capture all the input values that you submitted, right? So you can see how they are different from the defaults. And then we share here the Forrester TEI methodology so that you can really get into the details about how Forrester went and interviewed the customers, created the financial models, the fact that they maintain editorial control. We're not a part of those interviews. We review the output, but we don't sway our customers in any way, shape, or form. And we don't have editorial control on the studies that come out of it or the models themselves. So it's really a kind of an independent third-party assessment that stands behind these numbers, again, with Forrester and the brand. And their brand, I should say. So, it lends a lot of credibility to what we're doing. And then finally, some additional resources. For those who really want to go deep, you can read the full study, this total economic impact study on security operations. That's really the core of where all this information came from. And then we just, for convenience, have pointers to customer stories, some of our solution and product pages, and that kind of thing, just to make it all very, very complete and very robust. And so with that, let me get back here. So with that, those are the kind of things that we can show, right, and give you. And the idea being that, with that, once you press that button and hit send, not only does the report come up, it actually lands in your inbox. And so since I filled out Piero's information, Piero, did that? Please tell me that email found its way to your inbox.
Well, let's take a look.
If it didn't, I may have misspelled.
Nothing scarier than showing your inbox, but yeah, there it is.
There we go. Okay, cool. So
There
what we
are.
do is, yeah, we follow up and we show you, if you forgot to save the file, you have a link to get back to it. So again, what we're trying to do here is really make it easier for folks who are looking at security operations as a solution, looking at maybe expanding beyond what we have, really doing, I think, a helpful job to quantify those business impacts that we can help our customers make. So with that, Piero, why don't you go to the summary?
Yeah, let me go ahead and pull that up.
Unless you'd like some help with your email.
I won't turn that down. All right, there we go.
Okay.
Yeah, so I'll call it the first one, and maybe Steve, why don't you can do the closing one here. A lot of the data that we just went over and the whole calculator is really based on the total economic impact study that Forrester did. Now, the gentleman Anish Shah, who ran that study for Forrester, so he's the one who went through the Forrester data to do to get the underlying calculations, and he met with the underlying customers where he got the information to create what they call the composite organization, the average of the organizations that he interviewed. Anish is going to go over the report and the methodology in more detail. And so we've got a link on the screen there for where to register. You can also go to ServiceNow.com to the events page for webinars to be able to register for that. And this will give you a little bit more insight into a lot of the work that will, a lot of the guts of how all this stuff was put together. Because a lot of times you look at calculators and you want to understand where the numbers come from. Anish is the guy. And so I would encourage you, if you want to learn more, clearly we can answer questions, but it'd be great if you could join the webinar and you could hear a little bit more and even interact with Anish directly.
Okay, great. And what I'd add to that, we also, just for convenience, have put the link out here for the Security Operations Value Calculator. As you can see here, it's servicenow.com/security calculator. But if you can't find that, if you look up on Google for ServiceNow calculator, or on our servicenow.com site and just type in calculator, as I did, you'll be able to go ahead and find it. And an interesting data point is that not only was Anish the consultant who helped lead and do the interviews for the security operations Forrester TEI, he was actually the one who I worked with across all these calculators for basically confirming and certifying the models and whatnot. So I definitely encourage you to join the webinar. He's got a lot of certainly in-depth knowledge of where this data and information came from. So if there's any questions you have, it's a great opportunity to be able to ask that. So with that, we appreciate your time and attention today. As we go ahead and go through this, if there are any other questions that you have, please enter them into the community, and Piero and I will be monitoring them. Love the opportunity to hear and see your questions and be able to respond back to them. So with that, thank you all very much, and we'd like to adjourn for now and let you get back to your day. Thank you very much. Thank you, Piero. Great job.
Thanks, Steve.